Hey, everybody. It is week 9. This is Shoot the Gap, the IDP podcast for the Fantasy and Frames podcast network. I'm Nate Markham. With me, as always, is my friend Jorge Edwards. We can't have Hollywood Titan here. He's taking care of family, but we're here to take care of our family. That's you, the fantasy football family. So let's get it started. Welcome back, everybody. And Jorge Edwards. How are you doing, my friend?
Dude, I am freaking psyched. I don't really have a good reason why, other than the fact that it's another week in the fantasy football season. I'm here with you talking IDP shop, and sucks. I find it hilarious that of all the people in the world, Hollywood Titan has missed back-to-back shows for valid reasons, of course.
Yep, absolutely.
But he is so well known for being a night owl, yet he has for back-to-back weeks has gotten up at the crack of dawn on Sundays on our pregame show and taking it like a champ. So kudos to Hollywood. We miss you, but we look forward to seeing you on Sunday, as well as everybody else is going to look forward to seeing all of us on Sunday during our pregame show.
Absolutely. You talk about the Fantasy and Frames pregame show that we do every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, where we get you ready for every single game's relevant news from offense to IDP. Also, don't hesitate to go over to fantasyandframes.com. You'll find all of our IDP articles from start sets to waiver wires to the IDP roundup and our rankings. Also, remember to plug the Fantasy and Frames pot. Remember to plug. Wow, this is where Nate reads. I am Ron Burgundy. Yeah. Yeah. How about maybe I will do that. How about you check out the Fantasy and Frames podcast, where you can listen and watch all of our shows, including the Dynasty 365, which, if you're staying tuned for the multiple hours on Wednesday night we have, you saw that earlier with you on there, Jorge, for the Dynasty content, Fourth and Frames, with the week-to-week redraft content just prior to us. And then, of course, Shoot the Gap. That's us, the IDP content, as well as, the waiver wire show on Tuesdays, the mailbag show tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern. If there's a day of the week that doesn't begin and end with Fantasy and Frames podcasts, I don't know what else to tell you. And I'd say good evening to you, Rougarou. Welcome back. I love seeing you continue to come back. I love seeing everybody continue to come back. Hopefully some of the information we have given is reason you're coming back. We'll find that out, because guess what? Either you come back to talk trash to us because we gave you terrible advice, or you're here because we're just a little bit of information. And speaking of that, let's get right into information regarding news and notes. Fresh off the press, Jorge. Let's start with Kansas City. We lost Nick Bolton a couple weeks ago. We lose Willie Gay. Say we like I'm playing on the team, but you get the idea. Part of my heart, part of my team. Lose Willie Gay. The Chiefs went out and signed Darius Williams, who's familiar with the team. That tells me Willie Gay is probably not going to be back anytime soon. Pretty significant loss, considering he was really the LB2 for this team. You're getting about 60% of the snaps. So the question then is, Leo Chanel, who stepped in replacement, can he fill a relative role to keep the Chiefs defense still humming despite the bad game against the Broncos? The defense was still, better than average.
Yeah, I mean, he finished in Fantasy Pro scoring last week as the LB14, giving you 18 points this past Sunday. Quite impressive that he, going from the LB75 to the LB14. But absolutely, we've seen when Willie Gay has not been on the field, whether it was spurts of last year as well as this year. Chanel has come in and played pretty well. If you are the Willie Gay manager and you roll 3 linebackers deep, I hope Chanel's still available, and I would definitely plug him into your roster and start him.
Yeah, the thing with Chanel that's really nice is that they have been deploying him, and I wonder if it's going to be the same now that he's filling a more um, solidified role. He was more of I don't want to call him a gadget pass rusher because that's not fair to his true talents, but he has 8 pressures on the year so far, and that would be about 15th overall, and he's done that in 97 total pass snaps, 27 pass rush snaps. So it's about a 33.5% pressure rate. Not sustainable, of course, but that has helped support that IDP floor for sure.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying in Pittsburgh? Cam Hayward is ready to return. Defensive tackle leagues exclusively, Cam Hayward jumps right in. And if you ask me, is he a plug and play for defensive tackle leagues starting this week?
No. I always get cautious about people coming back from injury, especially an injury that's sidelined them for basically the entire season. But you mentioned defensive tackle league only. You go back to 2020, 2021, 2019. I mean, in terms of, Fantasy Pro points per game finish, just as a defensive lineman, he's a special talent, and he's been so consistent because of the tackle floor as well as the pass rushing prowess. So if I had to decide where I would start him and in what type of league, it would be in a defensive tackle specific early on. But I would not be shocked and I would not be surprised that you see him approach, that DL2 value that he has had over the course of his career. Yeah, is he longer in the tooth? Fine, whatever. If he's healthy, the dude can ball out and can, at the end of the day, we're talking about fantasy points, and he can get you plenty of those.
Yeah, and this first matchup is so juicy. That's what's tempting. Tennessee. We've seen Tennessee just be a sieve for pass rushers to get through, and I really like it. I just have my reservations about the first week back. But you know what? Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised at all, especially if you're in a league where bye weeks have killed you and you have to start them. I think you could get some return. It's just a little cautious. The Chicago Bears are going to be cautious with Tremaine Edmonds, who was injured on Sunday. We saw Jack Sanborn, a name that, and here's a little fun fact, of course, in the IDP only league that UI and a number of other, I would say, giants across the IDP landscape, I had to make a move and drop somebody in order to fill in the blank spots because I had a person on the IR that was returning that wasn't still on the IR. So the choice was lose out on 3 positions and get zeros, probably lose the week, or drop somebody, and that somebody, Jack Sanborn. And then, of course, Tremaine Edmonds gets hurt. Jack Sanborn gets picked up immediately, and I don't get him picked back up. But, we saw this out of last year. Jack Sanborn filled in admirably when he was playing full-time role. He looked the part this past week already. Tremaine Edmonds didn't practice today, not likely to play this week. Is Jack Sanborn going to fill in as what do you think, an LB3? Is he a potential LB2 this week for you?
Well, let me give you, some of his performances last year down the stretch where we saw his snap utilization really go through the roof here. So starting in from week 9 in 2022, 10.5 points, 28.8, 16.8, 23, and 16. Again, this is Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. You look at the tackle volume, 7, 12, 9, 14, 10. This guy was the darling of IDP circles last year. And then all of a sudden we were thinking, oh, well, he's going to take this step into the next year. Then all of a sudden TJ Edwards comes to town and I'm like, well, there's still hope. There's still hope. And then Tremaine Edmonds comes to town and is like, and hope is gone. But this is definitely somebody that I could see being an instant plug and play rest of the season, to be honest with you, as long as Edmonds is out.
Yeah, when Edmonds returns, he'll go back to being a supplemental role, which he does admirably for a real football team. Jack Sanborn is your LB3 to come in and have specific duties. I gotta say, you could do much, much worse. That's for sure.
He's like the Pinocchio of linebackers. He's like, I'm a real linebacker now.
Exactly. And so here's the question I want to know. is Jaquan Brisker from last week to what I want to say Pinocchio's nose is growing, that I trust that Jaquan Brisker, these two aren't compared. Last week he missed the game with an illness, and then he didn't practice today with a concussion. I don't know what to think. And maybe it's me being my ignorance, and I haven't read the reports out of Chicago that state why. Well, did he have a concussion prior and he was, nauseous as a result? I mean, that's speculation, and that's horrible speculation on my behalf. I should never even go down that road, but it's a weird, I haven't heard anything else about the concussion prior until really today. So I don't know. Do you have any more information than I have?
No, I don't. But going on to Brisker, it's disappointing because, in week 7, we finally saw him break the double-digit total tackle barrier. Up until that point, he'd only been giving you about, between 5 and 7 tackles a game. And what really made him really viable last year is that you were getting closer to the 9s and 10s and 8s, 9s, and 10s total tackles. And we mentioned it many times, during the offseason as well as during the season. Part of the reason we were concerned about Brisker is because you bring in these 2 stud linebackers. There are only so many people to tackle on a number of plays throughout the game. What would they be doing with them? I don't know. It's a bad sticky situation I'm trying to avoid if possible.
Yeah, it is. And that sounds like an indoctrination against Nicholas Morrow and Jack Sanborn from last year. But the fact of the matter is they're not, Edmonds and Edwards. So it is a difference. But we'll see. Hopefully he can get back in the good graces of the concussion protocol and play this week. I would like to see how the new look Bears come out this week and play. We'll get there. I know it's a sore subject. We'll slow burn. I'll just ease that Band-Aid off real quick. But Minkah Fitzpatrick was injured on Sunday. Short turnaround, is ruled out for this week's game. I think personally that it's Keanu Neal who's going to be the recipient of the majority of his snaps. And I think he's going to play. If last week was an indicator, he came in and saw of his 69 snaps, 30 of them were in the box or on the line. And that's where I want to see Keanu Neal, because if we can see that, he had 7 tackles. There's fantasy value in that. I don't want to say it's like over the top, but it's against Tennessee. We know that's going to be this run heavy situation. And so I think there's a case to be made that maybe Keanu Neal is a sneaky pickup. What do you think?
You hit the nail right on the head. He comes in after the injury, plays 40.6% of box snaps on Sunday. We've seen in years past Keanu Neal being your traditional box safety, getting you run support, helping defenses with run support, getting you those solo tackle numbers that you really want versus the assisted tackle numbers. So, yeah, I'm right there with you, especially with this matchup this week. He's definitely a plug and play for me with Tennessee coming to town, or they're going to Tennessee. Either way,
wherever the hell they're at, regardless. If they're going to change his snap alignment if they're at home or on the road, it's going to be the same. Hopefully, we see that. DeMonte Kizee is another name to pay attention to just in case, but I think that's a Keanu Neal situation, especially against run support. Now we do it, Jorge. Go ahead. We'll rip the Band-Aid off. We'll go to your we started off with my sorrow of my team's injuries to the sorrow of your team, moving to premier pass rushers, one of which many have called at one time a generational talent. The other has played, I think, the best season he's had of his career so far, both of which are actually the best seasons they've had. And in return, they got, let's put it this way. If Chase Young was up for trade last year and they try to get something, they were never going to get a conditional second and or a third for Chase. That was not going to happen. They were probably just not going to trade him because no one was going to give, low value. Maybe the same thing for Montez Sweat. But what do you think? Let's start with Montez Sweat. Goes to the Bears. Chicago Bears obviously lack pass rush.
Right.
Does Montez Sweat's ability in Chicago, do Do you think really, you know what? I'm going to save your opinion on this because I realize that these are two great questions that we could ask in the next segment called Money and Mirage. Yeah, it might have taken me a second to realize there was a good segue there and easy correlation. Probably was set up that way, but my brain don't work sometimes, and that's okay. But what we are going to do for Money or Mirage is we'll take a look at some players who I would say are either waiver wire pickups, players who have come on strong as of late. We're just polarizing names, and we take a look and we say, are these guys going to be money for your fantasy teams this upcoming week and for the rest of the season? Or are they simply a mirage, and you will just chase into that fake Looney Tunes cabana and not actually have the drinks and or the women waiting for you? We were all duped. Let's start off with Markquese Bell. Markquese Bell, safety / linebacker / whatever position he's going to be for the Dallas Cowboys. Jorge, Markquese Bell, we've seen some more play as of late, but is he going to be a money addition to your team, or is he simply a mirage?
So this is where it gets kind of tricky. So, you look at certain depth charts, they have him listed as a linebacker, which, okay, cool. But where, you draw the line at the distinction between real football and fantasy football is that on certain platforms, like a Sleeper, for example, they have him listed as a defensive back. So now you're getting a situation where you have this linebacker having mid linebacker numbers with a 6 or 7 total tackle floor with great solo to assist, now be counting as your defensive back. That's a cheat code. That is an ultimate cheat code. He, like I said, his back-to-back weeks, 6 or 7, averaging 7 total tackles in that span. As a defensive back, I feel like he's definitely a money play for that specific reason. I think the jury's still out long-term rest of the season what to make of this, but for the short term, I think he's a money play.
Yeah, and I would actually agree with that exact same sentiment. He reminds me in the position scenario of how I utilized Divine Diablo last year, or even 2 years ago, really, towards the end of the season, is that he was designated as a defensive back, would get you even LB like 30 overall number would be like a defensive back 15. So you were gaining even on the low end. It's still a challenge. It makes you say, like Ruguru will tell us that, he picked up Bell last week and haven't had the guts to play him. And rightfully so. I totally understand that. I picked him up, I guess 3 weeks ago in the Kings Classic, and I haven't had the gall, the nuts, the balls, the gumption to start him. But this past week was the week that I was really teetering, but I didn't know what Rashaan Evans was going to bring us or give us. And that was the concern, because Rashaan Evans will eventually, they bring him into play. And will that mean he's going to eat into Markquese Bell's snaps? Does that mean that maybe he could eat into Damone Clark? Most likely not Damone Clark. Damone Clark's been solid, doesn't miss tackles, not the most as dynamic as Bell has shown. But I think that's just, I don't know. I still think there's a little bit of trepidation in Damone Clark's game that he's not as willing to go balls to the wall with that neck injury. I think he's still just a cautious, good, solid linebacker. And I like Damone Clark a lot. So, my 2 cents on that. I don't want to see stupid Rashaan Evans take any of his snaps, but it's worth noting Markquese Bell this week. Man, I still don't know if I can recommend starting him or not, but you got Philly. That matchup is one that just screams back and forth and an opportunity for Bell to pick up a decent amount of tackles.
So you wouldn't start him. Let's throw out hypothetical start sit scenarios. Obviously, linebacker, you probably have your depth set up where it's at, or right. So if you're, defensive back deficient, for lack of a better expression,
yep,
is that the situation where you think, okay, I may take a gamble on Markquese Bell here, or is it more like I need to still wait and see what's going on. Like, because at a certain point, you worry about these fantasy platforms where they see the snaps and it's like, oh, well, he's actually playing more linebacker than defensive back. We're going to go change designations midseason, which drives me crazy, right?
Yeah.
And
same.
so your window for looking into when not to start them,
Mhm.
shrink, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the challenge. So, I mean, this week with the number of buys, with the fact that you have a person, let's say you're a Minka Fitzpatrick, I'd say manager, and that's a replacement. Yeah, I think that the upside there, and like in Ruguru's situation, he says he's looking for some help with Aiden Hutchinson and Foye both on the buy, and yeah, in like a IDP flex spot, I think there's a case to be made. I would have him right now as a defensive back. Need to adjust my rankings, so I don't want to say exactly where, but right now I'm putting him somewhere around 33 to 37, 38, somewhere right around there. And I'm teetering back and forth, but we'll see. As time goes on, if reports come out that Rashaan Evans is going to play more, then I drop him down some. I mean, I get the feeling that it's going to be, you need to take advantage now, because in about 2 weeks, his value probably just drops to potentially zero. All right. Going from defensive back to defensive tackle, Justin Madubuike, who, I mean, man, he's had a half a sack or better in each of the last 5 games. Decent tackle numbers, good actual pass rush metrics. Defensive tackle league specifically, I'm going to say he's a money play for sure, just because defensive tackles don't grow on trees, especially that have this type of sack upside. What about you, though?
You mentioned defensive tackle only leagues. You look at weeks 6 through 8. He is the DL7 in fantasy point scoring, averaging 14.4 points per game. Again, talking about Fantasy Pro scoring. You look at per PFF. You look at things that are important, like win rates, being able to shed your counterpart, your blocker, to get to the quarterback. He's the DL7, and I don't mean like interior defensive lineman 7. I mean when you're looking at edge rushers and interior defensive linemen, he is the DL7 the past 3 weeks. So this guy is playing out of his mind, and to get that type of production, going back though to a defensive tackle specific league or spot, is like stealing candy from a baby, which is ironic as Halloween just passed. But anyhow,
Exactly.
Yes.
Halloween candy last night. How did you go and chase down any kids and beat them up and steal their candy, or are you taking a year off from doing that with the bum leg?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get around chasing. It's kind of hard to chase people around with the cane and whatnot. But I was debating whether to dress up like Clark Kent, like a chubby, overweight Clark Kent with a Superman shirt on and a button down, or like John Cena, both of which I look totally like either way. Ended up going with with the Clark Kent Superman because of the glasses, right?
Smart move. Very, very easy transition from Clark Kent to Superman back to Jorge. It's just boom, 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 bada boom, bada bing.
Exactly.
As you go from those 3 positions, extrapolating on Justin Madubuike, is that part of his benefit is that he's been flexed around that defensive line. Last week, he played 5 snaps outside tackle, 10 snaps over the tackle, and 29 within that B gap. So his versatility across that defensive line has really helped support that floor as well, which is one thing I like to see, especially if defensive tackle designated players. You get that benefit of him moving kind of around, kind of like Christian Wilkins was doing really with Miami to start off before he's started to play on the outside even more and more as time's gone on. All right. Let's go to player 1 of the 2 that left your team, Montez Sweat. He goes to the Bears, as I was alluding to earlier.
Yeah.
Is Montez Sweat going to make you money, or is he going to make you sweat?
So I'm a little concerned because I want to know. I'm still trying to figure out, look, who is he? He played in Washington along great interior lineman.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Young has returned to form from what we were hoping him to be when
Mm-hmm.
the Commanders drafted him. Who is he? Is he the guy from 2022 when he didn't have a counterpart on the opposite end of the defensive line who managed to have a 15% win rate versus offensive line blocking and a 13.8% pressure rate? Or is he the edge rusher from 2023 with a 10.6% win rate and 11.3% pressure rate? Now, some of you might be thinking, why the hell do I care what their pressure rates are? Why do I care that they're lower this year? The guy's getting sacks. The guy is producing for fantasy purposes. My argument would say, okay, well, again, is he that individual shining superstar that can make it work wherever he goes, no matter the talent level on the defensive line? Or was he benefiting from that defensive line? Now he goes to Chicago, and the only other person I can think along the defensive line for Chicago that could potentially help free him up is Yannick Ngakoue, go Terps. And, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And that's what makes this kind of like a mirage for me. I had him firmly as like a DL2 rest of the season in Washington. But
Mm-hmm.
with this shift to Chicago, I'm kind of moving him down to like kind of DL2, DL3 territory. And I don't like doing it because, again, maybe he is that money player, but there's a lot of haziness in that whole mirage thing that I can't get past.
I agree with that. And I think the one area that I would look at is for a player like him that's had the production, despite the low actual win rate, says that he is persistent. He might not beat his, defender or his blocker within 2.5 seconds, but he stays with it. And which is weird because I didn't think of the Commanders as having a secondary that are stiff enough that allows him to get the production to the quarterback, because that's ultimately that breakdown. If you're an edge rusher and your win rate's not great, but your stats are good, one of two things has to happen. You've been lucky that the quarterback holds on to the ball too long, and is that as a result of poor play recognition, or is that because the defensive backs are, as they say, a coverage sack? And I don't know if Chicago has that. Tyreek Stevenson is not the shutdown corner, and I don't know if they have the secondary to do that, but I can't say that I thought Washington did either. Right. So that's what has me. That's my dilemma with Montez Sweat. But I would say Mirage, just simply because I don't know if I trust the numbers without the interior defensive line to help, give him more one-on-one options and matchups and take advantage of that, endless motor. Now, Chase Young, on the other hand, who joins a team that quite possibly doesn't need him. I mean, that is, I don't want to say the best defensive line in football, because I'm sure there will be some, people in Philly, and I don't care. You know what? That's the best defensive line in football. I think it is. It might not be the depth as deep, but
yes,
that is really, really good.
What you just said is exactly where I was going with that. Philadelphia, it has the best depth along defensive line, but I think starting defensive line, it's San Francisco now. I agree with that.
Yeah, and it's different too, because we're talking about pure defensive ends much more so than outside linebackers in Bosa and Young versus, say, Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. They're same title, a little different players, but my God. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the interior. I think Clelin Ferrell, if that's who takes a back seat, I don't know if he was having a good season per se, or if he just happened to have a good, like they needed someone to step up, and he had that this past week. Here he has 5 pressures, and he looked good this past week opposite Bosa. And they said, you know what? Not bad, son. You had a top 10 pass rush grade, I believe, on the week. We're going to go ahead and bring in Chase Young, and you'll be a rotational piece. But that rotation, again, keep in mind, you said the depth, and I'm looking at the list, and it's like their depth is they have Bosa and Chase Young, Clelin Ferrell, who played good, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, Javon Kinlaw, Randy Gregory, Drake Jackson. That is a list that, hearing it out loud. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty damn good.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. It's pretty damn good. And for me, this is all money. I mean, you want to talk about San Francisco is the defensive line is what Washington always wanted their defensive line to be ever since they first drafted Jonathan Allen and then Daron Payne and then Montez Sweat and then Chase Young. And it's like that. It's like that. And you look at the one-on-one attention that these guys are going to be getting because you got Bosa on the other side. You got the defensive tackles inside. You look at the win rates. You look at Bosa, I think he has like a 23 or something % win rate compared to Chase Young, who has like an 18.7, somewhere around there. Just elite. And you look at the division, kind of a bad division in terms of offensive line play. You got the Seahawks who are starting to get healthy, but not there yet. You look at the Cardinals, you look at the Rams. A lot of good games on the docket for fantasy managers to take advantage of if you have Chase Young or in a position to go out and acquire him somehow.
Yeah, somehow. I think his trade window or opportunity, not that it was wide open before, but I think this probably slams it shut. But, on the other side, this defense shouldn't be on the field that much. I see a lot of 3 and outs in their future, and I'm not quite sure that's an optimist in me saying anything, but that's also not me being a pessimist because you can only control what you can control. But we both agree he is money, and I feel sorry for quarterbacks facing the 49ers for the next couple of weeks for sure, maybe throughout the whole season.
You mean like Tre'von Moehrig 17?
Yeah, Sam Howell. Man, I hope he can throw the ball fast, get rid of it fast. Get rid of it real quick, my friend. Yeah. But then again, you know what? He torched Philly. So that was, I don't understand. What are we at? 9 weeks into the football season, and I have no clue.
Good.
What the hell? So
there's no. I think it was Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football who said nobody has separated themselves from the pack as far as like being elite of the elite, because you thought it was San Francisco for a long time. They lost 3 in a row. Philadelphia got taken to the wire with they had to come back versus Washington. No disrespect.
Twice.
Kind of some disrespect versus Washington. Sorry, Commanders fans. The Chiefs lost to Denver. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
Exactly.
From Ghostbusters. It's something.
And you know what? I think the best way to tie up that pass rush bow is exactly as Ruger says. If your nether regions don't wake up just a little bit when thinking about that front 7, you need to check your pulse. Yes, you don't need Cialis to get excited for the 49ers. They are Cialis in San Francisco, which, you know what? I'm going to move on. Tre'von Moehrig, Las Vegas Raiders. You have been talking about them for the past couple weeks, but as what you've been saying, more money? Or have you been leading us astray? Is this a mirage?
If I'm looking at his stats and I'm like, oh, pass deflection here, pass defense here, sack here, interception there, low tackle numbers, I would be like, all right, this is big play. This is boomer bust. This is, but you're looking at 6, 5. All right, there was a 3 where there was a PD and a interception that could have given me a reason for pause, but then we're back to 7 and 10. Dude's just putting up tackles. The solo to assist is in his favor. The Raiders, aren't going to be getting any better this season, I believe. So time on the field is going to be contributing to that. We saw him flying all over the field against Detroit on Monday Night Football. So I think you're going to see more of the same with him going forward. So he's a money play for me. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I started to doubt it a little bit at first. I thought maybe it would be just, like you said, you start to think it could just be one quick splash play that builds someone's value up. But if you watch and read deeper, you'll see each week your floor is pretty stable. Actually, really stable. That's all you could ever want. And those outlier, like if you look, heck, it wasn't too long ago where we were looking at him amongst the league leaders of all safeties in interceptions and pass breakups and defensive stops. He was PFF graded top 10 safety. So, I mean, all the metrics, underlying stats, and actual play on the field were coagulating into one solid player, if you will. For me,
and the box snaps too. You know, you can't forget about.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt. That's the most important thing.
Number 2 in the past 2 weeks in box snaps. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's 100%. I didn't say it because I figured you have touched on that aspect enough, and there is a direct correlation. You know, there's no doubt about that. We'll wrap this up with 2 different safeties that I think that at the beginning of the season, I had my reservations against one, and I had my hopes for the other. But I think that you'll be mistaken on which one was which. Richie Grant and Jalen Pitre. Going into the season, I was decently optimistic about Richie Grant, especially when he was joining the duo with Jesse Bates. On the other side, Jalen Pitre, I was pessimistic because I thought that a lot of his numbers were actually supported by the fact that he played a billion snaps on the field. And I didn't think the efficiency was going to hold up, and I thought that was going to get hurt, especially with the addition of some of the linebackers they added. But for those 2 going forward, is Richie Grant, let's start with him, a money or mirage for you?
I think he's money. And honestly, going to Pitre, I think he's mirage. I think we look at Pitre's, well, let's go to Grant first. You look again, you mentioned it last, the last player, steady tackle floor, 8 tackles, 4, 3, 11, 6, 4, 7 on the season. You throw in the splash play here and there. You again hate to use the narrative, but like, look, you're on a shitty team. Like, you're going to be on the field for a long time.
Yes,
again, you have the volume coming your way with the steady tackle floor. He's been playing really well, and he's been great for fantasy managers. Pitre, on the other hand, go to week 1 where he got injured, 2 tackles. Okay, throw that out. He misses 2 weeks. He comes back week 4, easing him back in, 2 tackles. Okay, well, maybe it's just a coincidence. Jump to week 5. Oh, he's got 13 tackles. All right, he has a pass deflection, a fumble recovery. Got you 21.3 fantasy points in Fantasy Pro Score. I'm feeling great. All right, 6 tackles for 9 points. All right, it's not 21.3, but it's 9. You go to week 7. Bye week. You go to week 8. Okay, 4. Okay, all right. This is not the DB1 that we all were used to seeing last year, and I don't know whether it's because the offense for Houston has been surprisingly playing better than most people had expected. Therefore, that volume that the Texans were giving on defense is not there as much. Not that I'm trying to say that Houston is this offensive juggernaut, but I just feel like the opportunities may be hurting Pitre and his upside so far this year.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that lung bruise that he suffered really caused some, I would say, trepidation in his regard. Like, I don't think he was being as aggressive, and he couldn't play some of those games as well. Week 5 was about the only week that he really showed out, and that was just at the case of Atlanta, who honestly, from a run defense standpoint, nobody really thought that it was going to be a passing game as much as they thought for Atlanta. And so that's where he really, with Pitre, in coverage, he had a really good game. I mean, hell, he had 7 tackles. That was the most he's had of the season in coverage. And it was that one outlier game, which is such a weird thing to think about, that it just tells you a lot about, I don't know shit for shit. I don't know anything. Because I would have said that game, I'd have said, you know what? If he's staying back, playing deep like he normally has against Atlanta, that's going to run the ball 87% of the time, he's not going to be involved enough in anything, and he's going to have a down week. And then he has 11 tackles, and most of which are in coverage. And it says, I don't know. I just don't know. And I hate to say I don't know, because that is a terrible thing to lead our people with. But there's one. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, it's frustrating, and we're trying to give you the best advice out there, but maybe we're doing that because there are a lot of players that we do know more often than not hit, and when we have to show pause or reason for concern and say, I don't know, then maybe the people who are watching and listening, you should know that if we don't know, maybe there's a better option that you could pick from. Let me ask you a question. Josh Metellus from Minnesota or Jalen Pitre? Is that who? Are you still rolling Pitre in this case, hoping for upside, or are you comfortable with the Metellus floor that he's established so far this year?
I mean, I feel more comfortable with Metellus because of floor, but I also think that there's a case to be made that a lot of Pitre's instability has been as a result of instability on the field. He hasn't had that consistent, if you look at his just overall snaps on the season, he hasn't had back-to-back weeks yet. He has, I take it back. He had 3 weeks. So in the span of weeks 4, 5, and 6, he saw it come together, but he missed 2 games prior, 1 game after, and then he came back. So maybe this week 9 will be the beginning of fortuitous play for Jalen Pitre going forward. And we'll see. I can tell you that what we will be able to tell you, in addition to Jalen Pitre or against Jalen Pitre, is that each week on Shoot the Gap, we will bring you players that we are going to play or players that we're going to fade. And for plays and fades, Jorge and I are going to take a look at a couple players for each position, defensive line, linebacker, and defensive back, that we are going to feel comfortable recommending you play in week 9, and players that we say, if you have better options, you should probably fade them. And this is going to take a look at maybe not the top 5 to 10 at each position, some of the low-hanging fruit, but it's also not going to give you outlandish, hey, play the defensive line 96 because we like the chance that he might, pick off a pass. We're a little more tempered than that. I think we are, at least mine are. I haven't seen yours yet, Jorge. So time will tell just how crazy it can be. Going back to last week, my plays and fades at defensive line my play was Jermaine Johnson. If you listen to that play, you were rewarded with the defensive lineman 6 overall, multiple sacks, an overall fantastic game for Jermaine Johnson. I wish I had played him in the sack lunch. I didn't, but hey, if you listen to it, you got the defensive lineman number 6. Congratulations. My fade was Rashawn Gary. If you had the gumption, the sack, the whatever, to not play him, you were rewarded because he finished as the defensive line 75. Can I follow up a top 10 finish and a bottom 75 finish? This week, I'm going to start off with a man who, for the first 5 weeks of the season, first 6 weeks of the season, we were basically saying he can't keep up the sack totals with the horrible win rate that he was having. He was lucky, situational, whatever the case might have been. That's Kayvon Thibodeaux. But over the last few weeks, man, we have seen a resurgence, and we see a situation this week, for me, that just screams opportunity and matchup. And if you were feeling concerned and you thought last week or the week before were just one-off situations, I believe this is not that case. This is against the Vegas Raiders team with Aiden O'Connell starting over Jimmy Garoppolo. The last time Aiden O'Connell started really a full game or played a full game, he was sacked 7 times against the Chargers. Now, I'm not comparing Kayvon Thibodeaux to Khalil Mack and or Joey Bosa, but I am, because Kayvon Thibodeaux has the physical attributes to be able to get to Aiden O'Connell, and I think that's what we will see this week. So fire up Kayvon Thibodeaux. From a fade, man, this one hurts. But the fact of the matter is this. Furious George Karlaftis, has been phenomenal. His true attribute is his motor. He never gives up. The guy continues to go and go and go. Unfortunately, against a Miami Dolphins offensive line, they don't allow low win rate edge rushers to get to Tua. They don't allow anybody to get to Tua, but especially the low win rate guys that are motor guys, because Tua is quick on the reads and reacts and gets rid of the ball fast. So as much as I love George Karlaftis from a real football standpoint, and I need him to do well here in Germany, I say 9 to him being in your lineup this week, and you can seek out better options. Jorge, why don't you take us to the linebacker? And this is for Hollywood. Hollywood inserted his plays and fades for us this week. He will let you read that, because if it follows up from last week, where his play was Azeez Al-Shaair, who did finish as an LB2, as the LB21 overall. Unfortunately, like many of us were thinking, Nakobe Dean said, screw your efficiency metrics and your snaps. I'm going to go ahead and be the LB7 on the week and absolutely dominate. So who does Hollywood have for play and fade this week?
So classic Titans fan, Hollywood Titan, wanted to say Azeez Al-Shaair again. Sorry, he decided to go with Terrell Bernard for his play of the week. Look, he gets overlooked a lot by a lot of the bigger name linebackers out there. But over the last 4 games, he's had 47 tackles, 11.8 tackles per game, 32 solos with a 68 solo rate. They play Cincinnati this coming week, and they have shown that they want to run the ball with Joe Mixon a lot and make the running game a focal point of that offense, as opposed to being more pass heavy and kind of neglecting the running game. So Bernard should get plenty of volume this week and get the tackle numbers there.
Yeah, I love Terrell Bernard. No, I was saying I love Terrell Bernard. I think that's a solid play for sure this week.
And now, we go to Hollywood's fade at linebacker, and this one hurts. I mean, we've again, this is a player that we've been talking about for, it feels like almost every other week here on Shoot the Gap, or we were talking about him there in the preseason, and we were talking about him during the NFL draft process and post-draft, and we just wanted to wish this into existence. And for a good chunk of the season, this player showed upward trajectory. Of course, I'm referring to Minnesota Vikings linebacker rookie Ivan Pace Jr. out of the University of Cincinnati. As Hollywood put in their notes, he just hasn't been able to keep up the pace after a fast start. I see what you did there, Hollywood.
Nope.
Yeah. He's not a fan of cutting him. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But he's not here, so therefore he can't really say shit to us. So it's okay. So it's very hard to trust him. For Dynasty, IDP, you're not cutting him. You want to see the development go into year 2. But for redraft, I don't know. I personally, I would rather find other options and have them on my waiver wire than him.
They're not
than him.
Yeah, they're not playing him. They're playing 3 safety sets consistently. They're all 3 of those guys. Bynum, Metellus, and Harrison Smith are playing 100% of the snaps. Ivan Pace is playing just sparingly here and there. There's zero chance that I can even roster Ivan Pace outside of maybe a dynasty league, which would make perfect sense. Or if if you've been holding on, maybe the Vikings at the trade deadline were to move one of their linebackers, i.e. Jordan Hicks, that would have been beneficial, but that didn't happen. And so, yeah, I'm right there in agreement with you. I do want to make a special point to some of the people in the chat. 2v2 league, I want to talk about, and Neil Medali, Wizzy Jefferson. I see a lot of the offensive questions, and as much as I want to answer them for you, we've made it a point that we're going to stick with the defensive questions. But if any of you are follower on Twitter and you want to go over to @Nate Markham or @Jorge B. Edwards, please send it in the DMs. My DMs are always open. I'm more than happy to talk those out with you. Or if you leave the chat, we'll try to get to them at the after the show in the chat as well, because I don't want you to feel like your voice is not heard. It is. And congratulations to the Rangers. That I think Gator is extremely happy for for the Rangers winning it. I feel, good because 2011 was a rough year for the Rangers fans in baseball. Yeah, we switched to baseball talk. We won't answer your offensive questions, but I'll go right into baseball. That's hypocrisy at its finest.
What's that? Talking about the St. Louis Cardinals, who just happened to be your home team for baseball.
We beat the Rangers in 2000.
That's what I'm alluding to. It's okay to talk about that World Series because the Cardinals, of course, capitalized off of that collapse by Texas way back when.
I would not say it was a collapse. I would say it was a resurgent effort by the Cardinals to overcome adversity and do so. But needless to say, let's move on and let's go to Jorge, your defensive back play and fade.
Yeah. So for those who listened last week and who watched the show last week, I talked about how Baltimore and their defensive backs have been just underperforming, and sure, they may have like a fluke week where they get you decent fantasy point totals, but it's just not consistent enough. Blah blah blah. Insert. This is the fluke week where they actually had two defensive backs, one in safety, Kyle Hamilton, as the DB6, and then Brandon Stevens, cornerback, DB12. Now, granted, Geno Stone. I got some flack from Hollywood about this. Lack of faith in Geno Stone. Geno Stone was the DB40, so that part was true. You could have, so that sucks. Kenny Moore, that's the one that really pisses me off because you saw the tackle numbers, you saw the efficiency, and it just not translate. But that's okay. That's okay because I got you covered this week. We got definite plays that are going to help you. The play for me this week is Jamal Adams. Baltimore Ravens are allowing the second most tackles to opposing safeties on the season. Averaging 7 total tackles in back-to-back games, averaging 11.4 fantasy points per game. Playing that dual box safety slot cornerback role makes him makes him the player that you remember him being for fantasy purposes years ago before the injury started mounting up. He has been playing very well in Seattle. We saw with his rise, you saw Julian Love's decline in productivity. And as long as he can stay healthy, the sky's the limit, and especially going against Baltimore this week, this is going to be a really attractive matchup. Conversely, on the flip side, my fade this week is Amani Hooker. A lot of craziness going on in Tennessee, post Kevin Byard taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are allowing the fewest tackles per game to the safety position, based off of Terrell Edmonds, newly acquired Tennessee Titans defensive back / safety, based on his 70% box snap percentage this past week. Now, granted, his overall snap percentage was like 25 something. So clearly they're working him into the rotation there, but 70% is freaking crazy. That screams to me like, okay, well, once he's up to speed, he is their box safety. You have, then the question is it going to be Hooker? Is it going to be Elijah Molden? And you saw Elijah Molden last week play majority of all safety snaps. So somebody has to be the odd man out here. I think Terrell Edmonds takes a jump and snaps this week, which means if Elijah Molden was selected to be the one who's playing the majority of snaps, somebody's on the outs, and I think that's Amani Hooker this week. So you can fade him and play Jamal Adams with confidence this week.
Yeah, I have to agree with both of those. I don't see Hooker playing enough. He played some slot snaps last week, and I thought, you know what, maybe this would be a situation against Deontay Johnson having a return again. Maybe that would, be paramount, but that hasn't even been the case as well. So the Steelers haven't really, even last week, the slot corner still didn't score enough to even elevate, what I would think of Amani Hooker this week. So 2 really good plays. I would say, I feel pretty comfortable, a lot more comfortable than the Baltimore defensive back recommendation from last week. I didn't want to put 3, but we'll see. Got one question here before we get to the last segment. Is Ruger wants to know, I'm curious why you guys think Huff is still on my wire. I mean, 39% snaps isn't great, but is he worth a stash? I mean, the easy answer for me is look what he's done with those 39% of snaps. I mean, he's turned that into a league, like not league leading, but he's near the top in pressure rate. He's definitely near the top in pressures as a whole. That I think the concern is just that maybe the tackle floor not being there is is worrisome, because that's the only thing standing in his way, really is. And that's one of the things that you don't care for, correct, Jorge? You don't like when edge rushers have a bad tackle floor or non-existent tackle floor.
I always like to lean toward, yes, I like to lean towards edge rushers who have that tackle floor that can then take it over the top. You look at this season on, that low snap percentage. He has 38 total pressures, leads the Jets, leads them with a 21.7 win rate, leads them in sacks. I kind of don't want him to get more playing time, to be honest with you, because I'm fearful that if he does, that efficiency will start to go down, and then you really have no idea who you're starting at the defensive edge for the Jets. Whereas now in this current role where he's at, it's working. Don't fuck it up. It's working. Keep going with it.
Yeah, it's one of those, in the rotation. I don't think they have as deep a rotation as others, but it is. It's one of those things. And I picked him up in one league, so it's not like I'm saying do one thing and I have done the other. But yeah, I mean, depending on who you can drop, Regrew, obviously it matters who you have available to move. But I like Huff. I think that going down the road for sure. And then let's see the final. Nope, I got it. So Johnny D, I see your question in the chat. And yes, as much as we smash the start button on Davante Adams because of the new coaching regime and all, please jump over to Twitter to @NateMarkham or @Jorge B. Edwards. Get the questions in for the offense, and we'd be happy to answer those. We're trying to stick with just the defensive side here. I apologize. Your voice is heard. We appreciate you stopping in, but shoot that over and we'll definitely answer those. And as we pack up our lunch pail and we get into the next segment, the final segment, the sack lunch. Yes, if that doesn't get you amped for what is my most hated segment now, because my percentage is shitty. I should have went last week, like I said, with Jermaine Johnson. I would have had 2 more sacks to add to the number, but instead I stay stagnant at 4.5 on the week with Quinnen Williams, who did not get a sack. Played great, didn't get the sack. Hollywood took Max Crosby, who didn't get a sack, which is rare. And Jorge, you took Bryce Huff. Congratulations. Speaking of the aforementioned Bryce Huff, you now have taken a lead 5 to 4.5 to 3. Who is your sack lunch this week?
Maybe you've heard of this guy. Maybe you've heard me talk about this guy maybe once, maybe twice. He goes by the name of Carl Granderson, edge rusher, defensive end, New Orleans Saints. Yeah, he's a guy. He's done some things. He's done some stuff. End of last year, when given the opportunity opposite Cameron Jordan. This year, has the opportunity opposite Cameron Jordan, playing lights out, going against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
The Bears versus the Bears. That's like a very extreme Boston accent. The Bears.
Yeah, the Bears.
Yeah. Anyway, the Chicago Bears are allowing the 3rd most sacks on the season. Just a smash play. He's going to get to the quarterback. He's going to get you another sack, and he's going to extend this winning streak. Coming from behind, missed the first 4 episodes, making a resurgent case to win this thing this year.
And Tyson Bagent in the Baz line has been sacked once in each of the respective games. Maybe this is the week where it doesn't, and one or the other, we can catch up to you. We'll see. Hollywood is going with Danielle Hunter, Minnesota Vikings, who did avoid the trade deadline, which sucks because I was hoping he would end up in Kansas City somehow. And he gets the tee off on Tyler Heineke and the Atlanta Falcons, who, if we know one thing, Danielle Hunter is impervious to any offensive line. I don't care who it is. Danielle Hunter is just an absolute beast. It's always a great pick. You just hope it's the right week to pick him. That is what it is. I am taking I'm going to say it's the gamble of the year so far, just because this is not a name. Would you have expected, if you saw the show sheet going in, who would you have said that I was going to take a person, not with just one last name, but with 2 last names? And Sebastian Joseph-Day of the Los Angeles Chargers. Yes, the New York Jets' interior offensive line is in shambles. And when you talk about an area of exploitation, they have been destroyed the last few weeks. They've brought in Roger Saffold to play guard opposite Sebastian Joseph-Day. And if that doesn't tell you, oh man, that's juicy. It's going to be this. I wish I could get double points for, ballsy calls or extra points. I can't.
Can we? Can we do
No,
double?
I don't think I don't think that's fair, because I think if we take defensive tackles, it could be worth more, like a weighted grade, but we didn't decide that at the beginning.
This is true.
If I get the sack, just know that somebody out there that plays in a defensive tackle specific league, this is the matchup that you want to exploit. Get Sebastian Joseph-Day or maybe Morgan Fox. I went back and forth, but I like the matchup against that right guard, that right tackle side with him and Mekhi Becton. And I think that's the area that I want to exploit, because they've now lost 3 offensive linemen to IR. So, yep, love that. Sebastian Joseph-Day. And on that note, I believe that wraps up week 9 of Shoot the Gap, Jorge. Any final words to everybody?
For those of you who are tuning in late and didn't hear the full show, the podcast, which you could find the Fantasy and Frames podcast for all of our shows, Dynasty 365, Fourth and Frame, Shoot the Gap, all those episodes will be released Thursday morning, November 2nd. Remember to head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out our IDP rankings, IDP articles. If you still have holes to fill and you want to search your waiver wire, check out our waiver wire article. Nate's got the IDP roundup for week 8 coming out, where he talks about all the different trends that he noticed for IDP purposes, as well as the IDP starts and sits. And Nate, we have the mailbag show tomorrow with Bill Mustafa and myself, and whoever else wants to jump in. We're answering all your questions, whether it's this week's matchups, rest of season stuff, trade questions, IDP, you name it. And then, of course, like we mentioned, and we keep talking about it, we're here nonstop for 3 hours, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, going to 12 p.m. Sometimes we go over, because we want to get you all the pertinent fantasy football information for every single player that's fantasy relevant from every single game. On top of that, we want to answer all of your start and sit questions heading into week 9.
Yep, absolutely. So again, Johnny D, Neil Medali, Wizzy Jefferson, 2vs2 League, and anybody else, hop over to our DMs and we will answer all those. So for Nate and Jorge and for Gator J behind the scene on the 1s and 2s, we are out.